Marcus Chen had been working the night shift at the research facility for 3 years, but he'd never seen anything like the woman standing in the hallway outside Lab 7. She wasn't supposed to be there. Hell, nobody was supposed to be there except him and the security guards, and they were all downstairs playing cards in the break room. The woman was tall, maybe 6 feet, with pale skin that seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. Her hair was white as fresh snow, falling in straight lines to her shoulders, but it was her eyes that made Marcus freeze in place. They were silver, not gray or light blue, but actual metallic silver that reflected the light like mirrors. "Marcus Chen," she said, and her voice carried an accent he couldn't place. It sounded like music, each word perfectly pronounced. "I have been waiting for you." Marcus dropped his coffee mug. The ceramic shattered against the linoleum floor, sending hot liquid splashing across his shoes. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The woman stepped closer, and Marcus noticed she wasn't making any sound as she moved. Her feet, bare and pale, seemed to barely touch the ground. "My name is Lyra. I come from a place very far from here. We have been watching your species for some time." "My species?" Marcus backed against the wall, his hand reaching for the emergency button that would summon security. "What are you talking about?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him with those impossible silver eyes. "You work on quantum mechanics, yes? You study the spaces between atoms, the tiny gaps where reality becomes uncertain." Marcus nodded slowly. It was true. His research focused on quantum tunneling effects, the strange phenomenon where particles could pass through barriers that should be impossible to cross. "How do you know about my work?" "Because your work has created something remarkable. Something that opens doors to places your kind was never meant to reach." Lyra extended her hand toward him. Her fingers were long and elegant, but Marcus could see something strange about her skin. It seemed to shimmer, like looking at water through glass. "I don't understand." "Your quantum experiments have torn small holes in the fabric of space itself. These holes connect your world to mine. They are growing larger each day." Lyra's expression became serious. "Soon they will be too large to close." Marcus felt his heart racing. The quantum resonance chamber in Lab 7 had been producing unusual readings for weeks. Strange energy signatures that didn't match any known physics. His supervisor had dismissed them as equipment malfunctions, but Marcus had suspected something more was happening. "What do you want from me?" "Come with me, human," Lyra said, extending her hand further. "There are things you must see, things your people need to know before it's too late." Marcus stared at her outstretched hand. Every rational part of his mind screamed that this was impossible. Aliens didn't exist. People couldn't just appear in secure facilities. Silver eyes weren't real. But the readings in Lab 7 were real. The energy spikes that had been keeping him awake at night were real. And standing here in the hallway looking at this impossible woman, Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe was about to change. "Where?" he asked. "Through a door that your science has accidentally opened, to a place where the laws of physics work differently, where space and time bend in ways your people are only beginning to understand." Lyra's silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. "But we must go now. The door is unstable. It may not remain open much longer." Marcus looked down the hallway toward Lab 7. Inside that room was his life's work, months of careful calculations and precise measurements. Outside the facility was his apartment, his car, his ordinary human existence. But standing here was something that challenged everything he believed about reality. "If I go with you," Marcus said slowly, "will I be able to come back?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on what you choose to do with what you learn." The cryptic answer should have scared him more than it did. Instead, Marcus found himself curious. He'd become a scientist because he wanted to understand how the universe worked. Now the universe was offering to show him secrets he'd never imagined existed. "Okay," Marcus said, reaching out to take Lyra's hand. "I'll come with you." The moment their skin touched, Marcus felt a shock run through his entire body. It wasn't painful, but it was like touching a live wire made of starlight. The hallway around them began to shimmer and bend, the walls becoming translucent like soap bubbles. "Do not let go," Lyra said, her grip tightening on his hand. "The space between worlds can be dangerous for humans who are not prepared." Marcus wanted to ask what she meant, but the world was dissolving around them. The familiar fluorescent lights and beige walls of the research facility faded away, replaced by swirling colors that had no names. He felt like he was falling upward through an ocean made of aurora borealis. Then, suddenly, they were standing somewhere else entirely. Marcus gasped and stumbled, his free hand reaching out to steady himself against what looked like a wall made of crystallized light. The air here was different, thinner, but somehow more energizing. It tasted like ozone and starlight. "Welcome to the Nexus," Lyra said, finally releasing his hand. "This is where the doors between worlds converge." Marcus looked around in wonder. They were standing in what appeared to be a vast cavern, but the walls were made of some kind of translucent material that pulsed with internal light. Geometric patterns flowed across the surfaces like living equations, mathematical formulas that seemed to rewrite themselves as he watched. In the distance, he could see other figures moving through the space. Some looked almost human, while others were clearly something else entirely. Beings of light and shadow, creatures with too many limbs or faces that shifted like liquid mercury. "This is impossible," Marcus whispered. "Your people say that word often," Lyra observed, "but impossibility is simply the boundary between what you know and what you have yet to discover." She gestured toward a series of archways carved into the far wall. Each archway glowed with a different color, and through them Marcus could glimpse other worlds. A desert planet with 3 purple suns, an ocean world where massive creatures swam through clouds, a city floating in space connected by bridges made of hardened starlight. "Each door leads to a different reality," Lyra explained. "Your world is just one of countless others. But your people's experiments with quantum mechanics have begun to destabilize the barriers between them." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean?" "It means," Lyra said, turning to face him with those silver eyes, "that unless we act quickly, all of these worlds will begin to collapse into each other, including yours." Marcus stared at the archways, trying to process what Lyra had just told him. The implications were staggering. If she was right, his research hadn't just been studying quantum mechanics, it had been accidentally threatening the stability of multiple realities. "Show me," Marcus said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I need to understand exactly what's happening." Lyra nodded approvingly. "This way." She led him toward one of the glowing archways, this one pulsing with a soft blue light. As they approached, Marcus could see through it to what looked like a massive control room. Beings that resembled Lyra were working at stations made of the same crystalline material as the walls, their hands dancing over controls that responded to their touch with cascades of light. "The monitoring center," Lyra explained as they stepped through the archway. "We track the stability of all connected realities from here." The space was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed what looked like a 3-dimensional map of the universe. But instead of stars and planets, Marcus saw interconnected webs of light, each strand representing a different world or dimension. Many of the strands pulsed with healthy white light, but others flickered with warning colors, red, orange, and an ominous purple that seemed to eat light rather than emit it. "Each strand represents a different reality," one of the beings at the control station said without looking up. This one was male, with the same pale skin and silver eyes as Lyra, but his hair was darker and his frame more muscular. The red ones indicate unstable barrier walls. The purple ones are realities that have already begun to collapse, Lyra finished. When a strand turns purple, we have perhaps days before that world ceases to exist. Marcus followed her gaze upward and felt his stomach drop. Near the center of the web was a strand that he somehow knew represented Earth. It was flickering between white and red, pulsing with an irregular rhythm that suggested something was seriously wrong. "That's my world," Marcus said. "Yes, and this is why we brought you here." The male being finally turned to face them. "I am Kale, Lyra's research partner. We have been studying the quantum disruptions emanating from your planet for several months now." Kale gestured, and the air in front of them shimmered, before resolving into a holographic display. Marcus recognized the energy readings immediately. They were identical to the anomalous signatures he'd been detecting in Lab 7. "Your quantum resonance experiments are creating microscopic tears in the barrier between dimensions," Kale explained. "Each experiment makes the tears larger. At the current rate of expansion, the barrier will fail completely within 36 Earth days." "And when it fails?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to hear the answer. "Reality collapse," Lyra said simply. "Your world will begin merging with adjacent dimensions. The physical laws that govern your universe will become unstable. Gravity might suddenly work in reverse. Time could flow backward. Matter and energy could spontaneously convert into forms that cannot support life. Marcus sat down heavily on what appeared to be a bench made of crystallized air. The weight of responsibility was crushing. His research, his life's work, was going to destroy not just Earth but potentially countless other worlds. There has to be a way to fix this, he said. Some way to close the tiers or stabilize the barriers. Kyle and Lyra exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't interpret. There is, Lyra said carefully. But it would require your people to do something they have never done before. What? Trust beings from another world completely. Allow us to work directly with your scientists. Share your technology while learning ours. Kale moved to another control station, bringing up what looked like technical schematics. We have the knowledge to repair the barrier damage, but we need access to the quantum resonance equipment that caused it. We need to recalibrate the devices from within your reality. Marcus studied the schematics. Even with his advanced training in quantum physics, most of what he was seeing was beyond his understanding. The mathematics were elegant but alien, based on principles that human science hadn't discovered yet. My government won't believe this, Marcus said. Even if I could convince my supervisors, getting approval for alien contact would take months of bureaucracy. We don't have that kind of time. We know, Lyra said. This is why we came to you specifically, Marcus Chen. Your security clearance gives you access to the quantum lab after hours. Your research focus makes you one of the few humans who might understand what needs to be done, and your psychological profile suggests you are capable of making difficult decisions under pressure. You've been studying me? We've been studying all the researchers working on quantum mechanics projects, Kale admitted. Looking for someone who could serve as a bridge between our peoples. Someone who could help us prevent the catastrophe that is coming. Marcus stood up and walked closer to the holographic display, showing the tier in reality. From this perspective, he could see how the damage was spreading, following the quantum field lines generated by his experiments like cracks spreading through glass. What exactly would I need to do? Return to your world, Lyra said. Continue your experiments, but with modifications we will teach you. The quantum resonance chamber can be converted into a reality stabilizer, but the process is delicate. One mistake could accelerate the collapse instead of preventing it. And if I succeed, the barriers will be repaired. Your world will be safe, and humanity will have proven itself capable of working with other civilizations to solve galactic-scale problems. Kale's silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. Such cooperation has historically been the first step toward joining the greater community of worlds. Marcus felt a chill run through him. There are others? Other civilizations? Thousands, Lyra said. Most worlds that develop quantum mechanics technology eventually discover the existence of parallel realities. Some, like yours, do so accidentally. Others are guided to the discovery by older civilizations. But all must eventually choose whether to isolate themselves or become part of something larger. The implications were staggering. Marcus was being offered not just a chance to save Earth, but to potentially usher humanity into a galactic community. But the risk was enormous. If he failed, he would be directly responsible for the destruction of his entire world. I need to know something, Marcus said. Why are you helping us? What do you gain from preventing Earth's destruction? Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting the light patterns flowing across the chamber's walls. Because your people are remarkable, Marcus Chen. In all our studies of developing civilizations, we have never encountered a species that shows such determination in the face of impossible odds. Such creativity in solving problems that seem unsolvable. Humanity fights, Kale added, not just against external threats, but against the limitations of your own knowledge and technology. You refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. This quality is rare in the universe and valuable beyond measure. Marcus thought about humanity's history, the countless times his species had faced extinction, and somehow found a way to survive and thrive. The way humans had gone from primitive hunter-gatherers to space travelers in just a few thousand years. The stubborn refusal to give up that seemed to define his entire species. All right, Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. Teach me what I need to know. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Lyra smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, she looked almost human. I was hoping you would say that. She gestured toward another archway, this one glowing with a warm golden light. Come, it is time you learned how reality actually works. The golden archway led to what appeared to be a vast library, but instead of books, the shelves contained floating orbs of light that pulsed with different colors and intensities. Some were small as marbles, others large as basketballs, and all of them hummed with a musical resonance that Marcus could feel in his bones. Knowledge spheres, Lyra explained, seeing his wonder. Each one contains the complete understanding of a particular aspect of reality. Touch this one. She guided him to a sphere about the size of his fist, glowing with soft blue light. The moment Marcus's fingers made contact, information flooded his mind, not as words or images, but as direct understanding. Suddenly, he could see the mathematical relationships that governed quantum entanglement, could feel the way particles communicated across vast distances through dimensions he hadn't even known existed. Marcus staggered backward, his head spinning. That's incredible. It's like having someone else's education downloaded directly into my brain. The knowledge transfer process can be overwhelming for species that rely primarily on linear learning, Kyle said, appearing beside them. But it is the only way to teach you what you need to know in the time we have available. Over the next several hours, though time seemed to work differently in this place, Marcus touched sphere after sphere. Each one revealed new layers of reality that human science had never imagined. He learned about the 11 dimensions that folded through ordinary space, the way consciousness itself affected the behavior of quantum particles, and the delicate balance that kept parallel universes from crashing into each other. The most shocking revelation came from a large golden sphere that Lyra seemed reluctant to let him touch. This contains knowledge of human potential, she said carefully. What your species could become given time and proper guidance. The moment Marcus made contact, he saw visions that took his breath away. Humans spreading across not just their galaxy, but multiple galaxies, building cities that spanned dimensions, developing technology that could reshape reality itself. But more than that, he saw humans working alongside dozens of other species, serving as mediators and problem solvers for conflicts that spanned entire star systems. We're meant to be diplomats, Marcus breathed, pulling his hand away from the sphere. On a galactic scale. Among other things, Lyra confirmed. Your species has a unique talent for finding common ground between very different types of beings. It's why we believe humanity could become a crucial part of the galactic community. But first, we have to survive the next month, Kale added pragmatically. They moved to a workspace where the theoretical knowledge Marcus had gained could be put into practice. The equipment here was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Crystalline structures that responded to thought, holographic interfaces that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level, and diagnostic tools that could peer directly into the quantum foam that underlied all of reality. Your quantum resonance chamber works by exciting particles to higher energy states, Lyra explained as she manipulated a holographic model of Marcus's equipment. But the frequencies you've been using create harmonic resonances in the dimensional barriers, like tuning forks vibrating in sympathy. Marcus watched as she adjusted the model, changing the wave patterns from chaotic interference to smooth, stabilizing rhythms. So instead of exciting the particles randomly, we need to create specific harmonic frequencies that reinforce the barriers instead of weakening them. Exactly. But the calculations must be precise. A deviation of even 0.001% could turn the stabilizer into an accelerator of the collapse process. Kale produced what looked like a crystalline data storage device. These are the exact frequency patterns you'll need, along with the modification instructions for your equipment. But Marcus, you must understand, once you begin this process, there can be no mistakes. No stopping to reconsider. The stabilization sequence must be completed in one continuous operation lasting approximately 4 hours. Marcus took the device, surprised by how warm it felt in his hands. What happens if I'm interrupted? If security discovers what I'm doing? Then not only will your world be destroyed, but the collapse will spread to adjacent realities, Lyra said gravely. The disruption could potentially destroy dozens of inhabited worlds. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but Marcus found himself thinking about something Kale had said earlier. Humanity fights. They refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. I'll need help, Marcus said. There's no way I can modify all the equipment and run the stabilization sequence by myself in 4 hours. But I know someone who might be willing to assist if I can convince her this isn't all an elaborate hallucination. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Lyra said, surprising him. Your research partner. Yes, we considered approaching her as well. Her psychological profile suggests she would be receptive to evidence of extraterrestrial contact, and her expertise in quantum field manipulation would be invaluable. You really have been studying us thoroughly. We had to, Kale said. The fate of multiple worlds depends on choosing the right humans for this task. Lyra moved to another control interface, bringing up what appeared to be a real-time view of Marcus's laboratory back on Earth. We can transport you back to any point in time within 12 hours of when we brought you here. But once you return, we will not be able to contact you again until the stabilization is complete. The dimensional barriers are too unstable for safe transit. Marcus studied the image of his familiar laboratory, thinking about everything he'd learned. The knowledge spheres had given him understanding that would take human science centuries to develop naturally. But more than that, they'd shown him humanity's potential. Not just to survive, but to become something magnificent. There's something I don't understand, Marcus said. If you can travel between dimensions, if you have all this advanced technology, why do you need humans to fix this problem? Why can't you just repair the barriers yourselves? Lyra and Kale exchanged one of their unreadable glances again. Because, Lyra said slowly, the barriers can only be stabilized from within the reality that's collapsing. We cannot enter your dimension directly without risking our own reality's stability. The quantum resonance equipment must be operated by someone who exists naturally within your dimensional framework. Also, Kyle added, there are certain political considerations. The Galactic Council has strict rules about direct intervention in developing civilizations. By helping you solve this problem yourselves, we technically avoid violating those restrictions. Marcus laughed despite the enormous pressure he was feeling. So you're essentially giving us the answers to the test while technically following the rules about not cheating. An accurate if crude analogy, Lyra said with what might have been amusement. But the Council recognizes that sometimes strict adherence to protocol would result in unnecessary loss of life on a massive scale. Marcus took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for what was coming. All right, send me back. I have a world to save and a colleague to convince that aliens are real. Marcus, Lyra said, placing a hand on his shoulder, I want you to know that regardless of what happens, you have already proven something important about your species. You faced the unknown without fear, accepted responsibility for consequences you never intended, and chose to risk everything to protect not just your own world but others you'd never even seen. That, Kale added, is why we believe humanity deserves a place among the stars. The compliment should have felt good, but Marcus was too focused on the enormity of the task ahead to fully appreciate it. In a few hours, he would be back in his familiar laboratory, trying to convince his skeptical colleague that aliens had just taught him how to save multiple universes. One last question, Marcus said, as Lyra began manipulating the controls that would transport him home. If we succeed, what happens next? Do we get to meet the Galactic Council? Do we become part of this greater community you mentioned? That, Lyra said as the world began to shimmer around him, will be up to humanity to decide. But Marcus, when that time comes, I hope we meet again under better circumstances. The last thing Marcus saw before the dimensional transport took hold was Lyra's silver eyes, filled with something that looked remarkably like hope. Marcus materialized back in the hallway outside Lab 7, the crystalline device still warm in his hand. For a moment, he wondered if the entire experience had been some kind of elaborate dream, brought on by too much caffeine and too little sleep. Then he looked down at the shattered coffee mug on the floor, the ceramic pieces exactly where they'd fallen when he first saw Lyra. But something was different. The fluorescent light seemed dimmer somehow, and there was a faint humming in the air that hadn't been there before. When Marcus checked his watch, he discovered that only 20 minutes had passed since Lyra first appeared. 20 minutes to learn the fundamental secrets of reality and accept responsibility for preventing multidimensional collapse. The crystalline device pulsed with soft light, confirming that his experience had been real. Inside his mind, the knowledge from the spheres remained intact. Complex mathematical formulas, dimensional theory, and most importantly, the exact modifications needed to convert his quantum resonance chamber into a reality stabilizer. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Sarah Martinez. She answered on the third ring, sounding groggy. Marcus, it's almost midnight. This better be important. Sarah, I need you to come to the lab. Right now. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to trust me and not ask questions until you get here. There was a pause. Are you all right? You sound strange. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I've just learned something that's going to change everything we thought we knew about physics. But I need your help to prove it. Sarah Martinez had been Marcus's research partner for 2 years. She was brilliant, methodical, and had a healthy skepticism that kept their research grounded in reality. She was also, Marcus hoped, open-minded enough to accept evidence of something extraordinary. "Give me 15 minutes," Sarah said. While he waited, Marcus used the time to familiarize himself with the modifications he would need to make. The crystalline device projected holographic blueprints when he touched it, showing him exactly how to recalibrate the quantum resonance chamber. The process was complex but not impossible. With Sarah's help, they could have everything ready in about 3 hours. Sarah arrived looking concerned and slightly annoyed. She was a small woman with dark hair always pulled back in a practical ponytail, and tonight she wore jeans and an old MIT sweatshirt that had seen better days. "All right, Marcus, what's the emergency? And please tell me you haven't been experimenting on yourself with the quantum field generator." Marcus took a deep breath. "Sarah, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I need you to look at the evidence before you decide whether or not to believe me." He showed her the crystalline device, letting her examine its impossible structure and the way it responded to touch with cascades of light. Then he began explaining what he'd learned, starting with the dimensional tiers and working up to the impending reality collapse. Sarah listened without interrupting, but Marcus could see the skepticism growing in her expression. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus," she said carefully, "have you been under a lot of stress lately? Maybe working too many late shifts?" "I knew you'd react this way," Marcus said. "That's why I need to show you proof." He led her into Lab 7 and activated the quantum resonance chamber. The machine hummed to life, and immediately, the anomalous energy readings appeared on their instruments. But now, with his enhanced understanding, Marcus could see what the readings actually meant. "Look at the resonance patterns," Marcus said, pointing to the display. "See how they're creating interference waves? Those aren't equipment malfunctions, Sarah. They're tears in the fabric of space-time itself." Sarah studied the readings more carefully. As a quantum physicist, she knew that the patterns were unlike anything in the literature. The energy signatures were definitely real, but they didn't match any known quantum phenomena. "Assuming for a moment that I believe you," Sarah said slowly, "what exactly do you need me to do?" Marcus showed her the holographic blueprints projected by the crystalline device. "We need to modify the resonance chamber to produce specific harmonic frequencies. Instead of creating random quantum fluctuations, we'll be generating stabilizing waves that can repair the dimensional damage." Sarah examined the blueprints with professional interest. Even if she didn't believe the alien contact story, the modifications themselves were elegant and theoretically sound. The mathematics were far beyond current human knowledge, but they followed logical principles. "These calculations," Sarah said, tracing the holographic equations with her finger, "they're based on 11-dimensional theory, but the approach is completely novel." "Where did this come from?" "From a civilization that's been studying multidimensional physics for thousands of years," Marcus said. "Sarah, they've offered to help humanity become part of a galactic community. But first, we have to prove we can handle this crisis." Sarah walked around the quantum chamber, studying it from different angles. "You know what the crazy part is? These modifications might actually work. If the theoretical framework is correct, we could create stable wormholes, maybe even controlled dimensional portals. Or," Marcus said grimly, "if we make a mistake, we could accelerate the collapse and destroy multiple inhabited worlds." That got Sarah's attention. She turned to face him, her expression serious. "How many worlds?" "Potentially dozens. The dimensional barriers are connected in a network. If one reality collapses completely, it creates a cascade effect." Sarah was quiet for several minutes, thinking. Marcus could see her weighing the evidence, trying to decide whether to trust him. Finally, she nodded. "I don't know if I believe the alien contact story," she said, "but the science is sound, and those energy readings are definitely real. If there's even a chance that you're right about the danger, we have to try." Marcus felt a wave of relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said, pulling on work gloves. "If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. What's our timeline?" The stabilization sequence has to be completed in one continuous 4-hour operation. Once we start, we can't stop or the whole system could become unstable. Sarah checked her watch. It's almost 1 a.m. We can have the modifications done by 4, run preliminary tests until 5, then start the main sequence. That should give us until 9 a.m. before the day shift arrives. They worked in focused silence, carefully implementing each modification exactly as specified in the alien blueprints. The crystalline device provided real-time feedback, confirming when each adjustment was correct and warning them away from potentially dangerous mistakes. As they worked, Marcus found himself thinking about what Lyra had told him about human potential. The idea that his species could become galactic diplomats seemed impossible, but then again, 12 hours ago he would have said alien contact was impossible too. "Marcus," Sarah said during a brief break, "assuming this all works, what happens next? Do your alien friends come back?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Lyra said they couldn't contact us again until the stabilization was complete. After that, I guess we'll find out whether humanity is ready for the larger universe." Sarah looked at the modified quantum chamber, now humming with different harmonic frequencies than before. "You know, if this works, it's going to change everything. Not just physics, but philosophy, religion, politics, the whole human worldview." "Maybe," Marcus said. "Or maybe humanity is more adaptable than we think. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. We've gone from thinking the Earth was the center of the universe to exploring other planets. Maybe we're ready for this next step." At 4 a.m. they completed the final modification. The quantum resonance chamber had been transformed into something that looked almost organic, with crystalline growths extending from the original machinery like technological coral. The device hummed with harmonious frequencies that seemed to resonate with something deep in Marcus's bones. "Preliminary tests are all green," Sarah reported, checking the instrument readings. "Energy output is stable, harmonic frequencies are within acceptable ranges, and the dimensional stress indicators are showing positive values for the first time in weeks." Marcus felt a mix of excitement and terror. They'd successfully built a machine that could theoretically repair tears in reality itself. But in 1 hour they would find out whether their work would save the world or destroy it. "Sarah," Marcus said, "I want you to know that whatever happens, working with you on this has been an honor." Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the lab. "Same here, Marcus. Now let's go save some universes." At exactly 5 a.m., Marcus initiated the reality stabilization sequence. The modified quantum chamber began producing a low musical hum that seemed to vibrate through the entire building. The crystalline device in his hand grew warm and began projecting a complex 3-dimensional display showing the dimensional barriers around Earth. Sarah monitored the instrument readings while Marcus guided the stabilization process using knowledge downloaded from alien spheres. It was like conducting an orchestra made of quantum particles, each frequency carefully tuned to reinforce the weakened barriers between dimensions. "Energy levels are climbing steadily," Sarah reported. "Dimensional stress indicators are dropping into the green zone for the first time since we started taking readings." Marcus watched the holographic display as tiny tears in reality began to seal themselves. The process was beautiful and terrifying. He could see the fabric of space-time actually healing, like watching wounds close in fast forward. But he could also see how delicate the process was. One wrong frequency, one moment of instability, and everything could unravel. "There's something else happening," Sarah said, her voice tight with excitement. "The quantum field generators are picking up some kind of signal. It's like communication." Marcus looked at the readings and felt his heart skip. The stabilization process was creating a temporary window of stable dimensional contact. Messages were coming through from other realities, not just from Lyra's people, but from dozens of different civilizations. "They're watching us," Marcus realized. "The other worlds. They want to see if we can fix this." The signals were too complex for their equipment to fully decode, but the emotional content was clear. Hope, encouragement, and something that felt like cosmic applause as humanity took its first steps toward joining the galactic community. 2 hours into the process, they encountered their first serious problem. One of the dimensional tiers was larger than the others, and the standard stabilization frequencies weren't strong enough to seal it completely. The tier was actually growing larger as they watched, threatening to destabilize everything they'd accomplished. "We need more power," Sarah said, her hands flying over the controls. But if we push the generators beyond their safety limits, we could cause a containment breach. Marcus studied the problem, drawing on the alien knowledge in his mind. There was a solution, but it was risky. Instead of trying to seal the large tear directly, they could use it as a focal point to redistribute the stabilization energy across the entire dimensional network. Sarah, trust me on this. We're going to redirect all our output through the largest tear. Are you insane? That could tear the barrier wide open, or it could turn the tear into a stabilization node that reinforces the entire network, Marcus said, his hands already moving to implement the changes. It's a technique called dimensional harmonics. We use the instability to create stability. Sarah watched the energy readings spike into dangerous territory as Marcus redirected their equipment. For a moment, it looked like the whole system was going to overload. Then suddenly, the chaotic readings smoothed into perfect harmonic patterns. My God, Sarah breathed. It's working. The tear is actually strengthening the barriers. Around it, the holographic display showed the dimensional network around Earth transforming from a damaged web into something that looked almost like a work of art. The barriers were not just healed but enhanced, creating a stable foundation that could support much more advanced dimensional research. 3.5 hours into the process, they received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Richard Hawthorne, their department supervisor, appeared in the doorway of Lab 7. He was a serious man in his 60s who rarely smiled and never tolerated unauthorized experiments. Dr. Chen, Dr. Martinez, Hawthorne said, his voice deadly calm. Would you care to explain why every quantum sensor in the building is registering impossible readings? Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. They were less than 30 minutes from completing the stabilization sequence, but they couldn't stop now without risking catastrophic failure. Dr. Hawthorne, Marcus said carefully, what we're doing here could be the most important scientific breakthrough in human history, but I need you to trust us for 30 more minutes. Hawthorne stepped into the lab and saw the modified quantum chamber, the crystalline device projecting its holographic displays, and the instrument readings that defied every known law of physics. What have you done to my equipment? Hawthorne demanded. We've turned it into a device that can repair damage to the structure of reality itself, Sarah said bluntly. And if we stop now, multiple worlds, including Earth, could be destroyed. Hawthorne stared at them for a long moment. He was a brilliant physicist who had spent his entire career studying the impossible, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. Show me, he said finally. Marcus quickly explained the situation, showing Hawthorne the dimensional tiers and the stabilization process. He left out the alien contact story, focusing on the science and the immediate danger. Hawthorne studied the data with growing amazement. These readings suggest that parallel universes are real, Hawthorne said slowly, and that we've been accidentally damaging the barriers between them. Yes, Marcus said, and we have 15 minutes to finish fixing the damage. Hawthorne looked at the stabilization progress display. They had successfully repaired most of the dimensional network, but there were still several critical connections that needed reinforcement. What do you need from me? Hawthorne asked. The question surprised Marcus. He'd expected anger, demands for explanations, threats of disciplinary action. Instead, his supervisor was offering to help. Just make sure no one else interrupts us, Marcus said. This process requires absolute concentration. Hawthorne nodded and moved to the lab's communication system. This is Dr. Hawthorne. Lab 7 is conducting a classified experiment for the next 30 minutes. No one is to enter or disturb the researchers until further notice. With Hawthorne standing guard, Marcus and Sarah focused on the final phase of the stabilization. This was the most delicate part. They had to gradually reduce the power output while ensuring that the dimensional barriers remained stable. Too fast and the repairs could unravel. Too slow, and they risked equipment failure from prolonged operation at maximum capacity. Dimensional stress readings are holding steady, Sarah reported. Barrier integrity is at 97% and climbing. Marcus watched the holographic display as the last few tiers in reality sealed themselves. The dimensional network around Earth now showed as a stable, glowing web that pulsed with healthy energy. According to the alien knowledge in his mind, the barriers were now stronger than they had been before the crisis began. That's it, Marcus said, powering down the quantum chamber. We did it. The lab fell silent except for the gentle hum of cooling equipment. The crystalline device in Marcus's hand gave a final pulse of warm light before becoming inert. "Did we just save the world?" Sarah asked. "We saved multiple worlds," Marcus corrected, "and proved that humanity can handle cosmic-scale responsibilities." Hawthorne was studying the final readings with the intensity of a man trying to understand a new branch of physics. "Dr. Chen, where did the theoretical framework for this come from?" "The mathematics are decades ahead of current knowledge." Marcus hesitated. "How do you tell your supervisor that aliens taught you how to repair reality?" Before he could answer, the air in the lab began to shimmer. 3 figures materialized near the quantum chamber: Lyra, Kale, and a third being that Marcus didn't recognize. This one was taller than the others, with golden skin and eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. "Greetings, humans," the golden being said in a voice like distant thunder. "I am Ambassador Solith of the Galactic Council. We have come to formally acknowledge humanity's successful completion of the dimensional stabilization trial." Hawthorne dropped his clipboard. The silence in Lab 7 stretched for what felt like an eternity. Dr. Hawthorne stood frozen, staring at the 3 alien beings who had just materialized in his laboratory. Sarah gripped the edge of a workbench so tightly her knuckles were white. Marcus found himself caught between relief and terror. Relief that the stabilization had worked. Terror about what would happen next. Ambassador Solith moved with fluid grace, examining the modified quantum chamber with obvious interest. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Impressive adaptation of primitive technology," Solith said, running golden fingers over the crystalline modifications. "Your species shows remarkable ingenuity in working with incomplete information." "Primitive?" Hawthorne squeaked, then cleared his throat and tried again in a more professional tone. "I beg your pardon, but our quantum resonance technology represents the cutting edge of human scientific achievement." Kyle smiled, and it wasn't entirely kind. "Dr. Hawthorne, your quantum physics is approximately equivalent to what our children learn in elementary education. But that makes your success here all the more remarkable." Lyra stepped forward, addressing Marcus directly. "The stabilization exceeded our expectations. Not only did you repair the dimensional barriers, but you actually strengthened them beyond their original configuration. The technique you used in the final phase was particularly elegant. The dimensional harmonics approach," Marcus said. "I wasn't sure it would work." "It shouldn't have worked," Kale admitted. "The mathematical probability of success was less than 12%. But you managed to intuitively understand principles that most civilizations require centuries to master." Ambassador Solith moved to the center of the lab, and suddenly, the air around him filled with holographic displays showing dozens of different worlds. Some were familiar: Earth, Mars, the outer planets of their solar system. Others were completely alien: crystal cities floating in nebulae, ocean worlds with impossible architecture, desert planets with purple skies. The Galactic Council governs the interaction between 47,000 inhabited worlds, Solith explained. Most species discover dimensional travel gradually over many generations. They have time to mature, to develop wisdom alongside their technology. Your people accomplished in 4 hours what typically takes centuries. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked, finding her voice. "Do we become part of this council?" "That choice belongs to humanity," Lyra said. "But first, your people must decide whether they are ready for the responsibilities that come with galactic citizenship." Solith gestured, and one of the holographic displays expanded to show what looked like a massive space station orbiting a binary star system. "The Galactic Council maintains diplomatic facilities throughout known space. If humanity chooses to join us, representatives would be welcome to establish an embassy and begin cultural exchange programs. But," Kyle added with emphasis, "membership in the galactic community comes with obligations: protection of developing civilizations, assistance during cosmic emergencies, participation in the defense against threats that endanger multiple star systems." Marcus thought about everything he'd learned in the Nexus, about humanity's potential as galactic diplomats. "What kind of threats?" The 3 aliens exchanged glances that Marcus was beginning to recognize as their way of communicating without words. Finally, Solith answered, "There are forces in the universe that seek to consume or destroy rather than create and protect. Entities that exist between dimensions, feeding on the collapse of realities. Machine civilizations that convert all matter into computational substrates. Beings of pure energy that consider physical life forms to be inferior. And you want humanity to help fight these things? Hawthorne asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We want humanity to help prevent the conflicts that create these threats, Lyra corrected. Your species has a unique talent for finding peaceful solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The way you just solved the dimensional crisis is a perfect example. Sarah had been studying the holographic displays of alien worlds with scientific fascination. How long do we have to decide? There is no deadline, Solith said. But we hope you will consider the offer seriously. The universe is vast and full of wonders, but it is also dangerous for species that remain isolated. Kale moved to the quantum chamber's control panel, running his hands over the instruments. We will leave monitoring equipment that can detect dimensional instabilities. If similar problems arise in the future, your people will be able to address them independently. More importantly, Lyra added, producing several more crystalline devices similar to the one she'd given Marcus. These contain fundamental knowledge about dimensional physics, faster-than-light travel, and basic galactic history. Consider them a gift, regardless of your decision about council membership. Marcus accepted the devices, feeling their warm weight in his hands. Each one probably contained more scientific knowledge than humanity had accumulated in its entire history. Why are you being so generous? Marcus asked. What do you really gain from having humans in your galactic community? Ambassador Solith's galaxy-filled eyes seemed to focus directly on Marcus's soul. Because isolation breeds stagnation, Dr. Chen. The Council has existed for over 50,000 years, and in that time we have seen remarkable civilizations rise and fall. The ones that thrive are those that embrace cooperation and mutual growth. The ones that fail are those that choose fear over curiosity. Your species, Lyra said, chose curiosity. When faced with the unknown, you didn't retreat. You stepped forward. That courage is exactly what the galaxy needs. Hawthorne had been unusually quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke up. What about Earth's governments? Surely a decision this important can't be made by 3 scientists in a university laboratory. The decision must be made by humanity as a whole, Solith agreed. But it must begin somewhere. You 3 have proven that your species can handle cosmic responsibilities. Now you must convince the rest of your people. The implications were staggering. Marcus realized that they weren't just being offered membership in a galactic community. They were being asked to become ambassadors for their entire species. We'll need time, Sarah said. Time to understand the knowledge you've given us. Time to prepare our people for the reality of alien contact. Of course, Lyra said. We will establish a monitoring station in your outer solar system. When humanity is ready to make a decision, simply activate any of the knowledge devices and we will return. Kyle smiled, and this time it seemed genuinely warm. For what it's worth, we believe your people will make the right choice. You've already proven that you can put the welfare of others above your own safety. The 3 aliens began to shimmer, preparing to transport back to their own dimension. But before they disappeared, Lyra turned to Marcus one final time. Remember what I told you about humanity's potential, she said. You've taken the first step toward becoming something magnificent. Then they were gone, leaving only a faint scent of ozone and starlight in the air. The 3 humans stood in the sudden silence, trying to process what had just happened. They had started the night as ordinary scientists working on a routine experiment. They were ending it as the first humans to make contact with a galactic civilization. Well, Hawthorne said finally, I suppose I should start writing my report. Marcus laughed, surprising himself. What are you going to say? Dear Administration, we were contacted by aliens who offered humanity membership in a galactic federation. We may have also accidentally saved multiple universes. Something like that, Hawthorne said with a slight smile. Though I suspect the University Review Board is going to request additional documentation. Sarah was already examining one of the knowledge devices, watching it respond to her touch with cascades of information. Marcus, this is going to change everything. Not just for us, but for all of humanity. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. They had the knowledge and the opportunity to guide humanity toward a future among the stars. But first they had to convince a skeptical world that the impossible had just become possible. So, Marcus said, who wants to help me explain to 7 billion people that we're not alone in the universe? 6 months later, Marcus stood in the newly constructed Dimensional Research Center outside Geneva, watching as teams of scientists from 12 different countries worked together to decode the alien knowledge devices. The world had changed dramatically since that night in Lab 7, but perhaps not in the ways he'd expected. The initial revelation of alien contact had caused exactly the chaos anyone might have predicted. Governments had demanded proof, religious leaders had declared either salvation or apocalypse, and conspiracy theorists had claimed everything from government cover-ups to elaborate hoaxes. But gradually, as the evidence became undeniable and the benefits became clear, humanity had begun to adapt. The knowledge devices had revolutionized human technology almost overnight. Clean energy systems based on dimensional harmonics were already replacing fossil fuels. Medical applications of quantum field manipulation were curing diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. And perhaps most importantly, the threat of multidimensional collapse had forced the world's nations to work together in ways that decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve. Sarah Martinez approached Marcus, carrying a tablet displaying the latest test results from their dimensional monitoring network. The barrier stability readings are holding steady across all sectors, she reported. Earth's dimensional framework is more stable now than it's been in recorded history. Any word from the Galactic Council? Marcus asked. Ambassador Solith's monitoring station detected our signal yesterday. They're sending a delegation next week to hear humanity's official decision. Marcus nodded, feeling a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. The United Nations had spent months debating humanity's response to the galactic community's invitation. The vote had been close, but ultimately, curiosity had won over fear. Dr. Hawthorne joined them, looking considerably less stressed than he had 6 months ago. The revelation that his laboratory had hosted first contact had made him something of a celebrity in scientific circles, though he still insisted on treating the whole experience as just another interesting research project. The president will be here tomorrow for the ceremony, Hawthorne said, along with delegates from every major nation on Earth. Apparently, when humanity officially joins the galactic community, they want everyone to witness it. Through the center's observation windows, Marcus could see the construction of humanity's first dimensional portal, a device that would allow direct travel to the Galactic Council's diplomatic facilities. The technology was based on principles from the alien knowledge devices, but the actual construction was entirely human. It was important to the Council that humanity demonstrate its ability to build and maintain its own advanced technology. Dr. Chen, a voice called from across the research floor. Marcus turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, the center's director, approaching with a concerned expression. We're receiving an unusual signal from the outer solar system monitoring station. Marcus followed her to the communication center, where technicians were working to decode an incoming transmission. The signal was different from the usual council communications, more urgent, carrying harmonics that suggested extreme importance. It's from the Galactic Council, one of the technicians reported. But it's not addressed to our diplomatic team. It's specifically requesting Dr. Marcus Chen. Marcus felt a chill run through him. Put it through. The air above the communication. A ray shimmered, and suddenly Lyra's familiar figure appeared in holographic form. But she looked different. Her silver eyes were brighter, more intense, and there was an urgency in her bearing that Marcus had never seen before. Marcus, Lyra said without preamble, we need humanity's help. There's a crisis developing that threatens multiple star systems, and the Galactic Council believes your people may be uniquely qualified to solve it. What kind of crisis? Marcus asked. A dimensional cascade failure in the Andromeda Galaxy. An ancient automated system has been activated that's designed to collapse reality barriers across entire galactic clusters. Millions of inhabited worlds are at risk. Sarah stepped into the communication range. How is that our problem? We've barely figured out our own dimensional technology. Because, Lyra said, her image flickering with transmission interference, the cascade was started by a species very similar to humans, a young civilization that was experimenting with quantum mechanics without understanding the consequences. The automated system is designed to respond only to the same type of consciousness that activated it. Marcus understood immediately. You need human minds to shut it down. More than that, Lyra continued. We need human problem-solving approaches. Every other species in the Council has tried to stop the cascade using conventional methods. They've all failed. The system seems to anticipate and counter any logical approach. But humans are notoriously illogical, Hawthorne said with a slight smile. We specialize in finding solutions that shouldn't work. Exactly, Lyra said. Marcus, I know this is an enormous request. Your people haven't even officially joined the galactic community yet. But the cascade will reach inhabited systems in less than 30 Earth days. Without intervention, this could be the largest loss of life in recorded galactic history. Marcus looked around at his colleagues, Sarah, Hawthorne, Dr. Vasquez, and the teams of scientists who had spent months learning to work with alien technology. 6 months ago, they'd been ordinary researchers working on theoretical problems. Now they were being asked to save an entire galaxy. What would we need to do? Marcus asked. Travel to the Cascade epicenter in Andromeda. Interface directly with the automated system. Convince it to shut down using approaches that other species haven't tried. Lyra paused. It will be dangerous. The dimensional instabilities around the epicenter are unlike anything we've encountered. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. How many people would you need? A small team. Perhaps 6 to 8 individuals with expertise in quantum mechanics, dimensional theory, and creative problem-solving. They would need to work closely with Council scientists and be prepared for extended travel in unfamiliar space. Marcus thought about everything humanity had learned in the past 6 months. They'd gone from dimensional ignorance to dimensional mastery in record time. They'd proven they could handle cosmic-scale responsibilities. And now they were being asked to demonstrate that humanity's particular brand of stubborn resourcefulness could work on a galactic scale. I'll do it, Marcus said, but I want to bring my own team. Of course, Lyra said. But Marcus, you should know that this mission will effectively announce humanity's presence to the entire galactic community. Success or failure, your people, will be known throughout the galaxy as the species that either saved Andromeda or died trying. Sarah moved to stand beside Marcus. Count me in. And me, Hawthorne added. I'm not missing the chance to see another galaxy. One by one, the other scientists in the communication center volunteered. Marcus realized that in 6 months, something fundamental had changed about humanity's perspective. They were no longer a species that looked only inward. They had become cosmic citizens, ready to take responsibility for problems that extended far beyond their own world. Lyra, Marcus said, tell the Galactic Council that humanity accepts the mission, but we do this as equals, not as junior partners. If we're going to save Andromeda, we do it as full members of the galactic community. Lyra's silver eyes seemed to glow with something that looked remarkably like pride. I wouldn't have it any other way, Marcus. Welcome to the galaxy. As the transmission ended, Marcus looked around at the Dimensional Research Center, at Earth visible through the observation windows, and at the colleagues who had become the first humans to accept a mission beyond their own solar system. 6 months ago, Lyra had told him that humanity was meant for something magnificent. Now they were about to find out exactly how magnificent they could become. The universe was vast and dangerous, filled with threats that could destroy entire civilizations. But it was also filled with hope, cooperation, and the kind of impossible challenges that brought out the best in stubborn, creative, impossibly determined humans. Marcus smiled. They were going to save a galaxy, using nothing but human ingenuity, and the refusal to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. After all, that's what humans did.